Welcome to yet another inspiring conversation with really cool leaders. I'm Marc Pitman, the author of The Surprising Gift of Doubt. Right there. A brand new book coming out as of the time of this recording, coming out tomorrow. Rather than refreshing the sales stats and trying to see is anything happening, my wife suggested, why don't you talk to people you admire and people that you enjoy? So I get to do that. And this conversation is with some dear friends, Reverend Meg and Reverend Adam, Meg and Adam to me. And they're my co-pastors of the church that I attend. And I'm thrilled that you guys said yes to this interview. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It's this feels wild. And I'm so excited for you and the book. And I think like you have taken what you have worked on and put it in this just really succinct, beautiful package that people can take and kind of use. And like we saw so much of our journey also reflected in the stories that you had, and it's just been really a delight. So thank you for letting us be on this journey with you in that way. And
yeah, well, it was funny when I was thinking about preparing for these. I was thinking, okay, pastors that you were pastoring churches in New York during the pandemic, who are now co-pastoring and married, in the South during a pandemic, when meeting in person, we've never been able to actually install you with everybody in the room together. So maybe you know a thing or two about leadership in doubt.
I mean, we're just living the dream. So.
The dream's a nightmare, but it's still a dream.
Doing the best we can every day.
And you're doing wonderfully. I'm so glad you were called here. What are the times is there a time that in your lives where you've seen doubt rather than at least in hindsight, doubt become an invitation into growing leadership?
So absolutely. One of the things that I thought was really nice about your writing in the book, Mark, was you gave this example of people saying, oh, well, there's always somebody who's told you what to do until a certain stage in your life, and then that stops being the case. And I thought, yep. And then they all look at you and they expect you to know what to do because you're the one. That's like what leadership is. And I thought, well, that's weird because I never feel like I know what I'm doing. Like, maybe not never, but 2/3 of the time I always feel like, okay, we're going to figure this thing out. And there's a lot of that, like, almost shaming of like, if you don't have it together, everybody else has it together. But I think the truth is very few people know what they're doing all the time. And the people who do are probably, I don't know, like 3s on the Enneagram and just like producing some sort of image you're supposed to believe. And which is not an insult to 3s, but one particular time for me was when I went to seminary.
There's laughter from the other room when you said that. Emily's in the other room laughing.
I had a couple of people who told me, like, you should consider going to seminary. And I thought, you're crazy. Like, I've taken one class in school on anything religious. And it was theology and the sciences. And at the end of that, I was more sciences than theology. And so I applied I felt like every Presbyterian school in the country because I'm Presbyterian and didn't know what else to do. And then I sort of said, well, if this is the way, like, I'll get one back and that'll be the school I go to. And then, I guess my doubt was like, I don't have enough academic credit to be worth going to seminary. And then I got responses back from all of them saying, we'd love to have you come. And so that was sort of overwhelming. And then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to need a way to kind of pay for this because my parents were kind of like, yeah, you can do it, but you're going to have to fund it on your own. And I thought, okay, well, I don't know how to do that. So I applied for financial aid and then packages started coming in. But one morning at like early morning, I got a phone call and I answered the phone and it was somebody who said, hi, my name is Dean Thompson. I'm the president of Louisville Seminary. I'm calling because we want to offer you this, like our most prestigious award and welcome you to the seminary. And I was sort of like stunned because it was 8 a.m. It also happened to be April Fool's Day. And in my family, like April Fool's pranks are a big deal. And I thought, oh, well, lucky me, I'm sharper than this guy, and I know it's April Fool's and this is a prank. And so I said, I'm sorry, what was your name? Reverend Thompson or something? And he was like, yeah, sorry, it's I'm Dean Thompson. I'm the president of Louisville Seminary. I said, well, I don't know who put you up to this, but you should know it's not cool, and I don't appreciate it. And so thanks, but I think your offer, like, this is just a mean prank on April Fool's Day, and it's not nice to call somebody and pretend that you have an award to offer. And he said, excuse me? And I said, wait, what now? And he was like, I'm calling to offer you a full, like, scholarship to our school. And I said, and this is like a real thing? And he's like, yeah. And I said, oh, well, do you think we could, like, start over? Because it was quickly becoming apparent that I was, like, just messing this up in an extreme way. And he said, yeah, I think that would be best. And so my response at that point was just to hang up the phone instead of doing anything else. And my roommates were all looking at me like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with your life? Thankfully, he graciously called back, and I was like a normal human citizen of the world and graciously accepted the offer and ended up going to school there. But that felt like there was this huge imposter syndrome there the whole time, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I've also, like, initially messed up this great offer where people believed in me and I didn't believe in myself in the same way. And every time I saw him, he would sort of smile and chuckle and tell this story to, like, anybody who was present, and, like, the dean of admissions, like, everybody knew this story on campus. And so it just felt like that was just part of my life and story was
throughout your time on campus. Oh, you're the guy that hung up on the dean. Right. And it was like, I was the guy that, I think there's a Mark Twain quote that says, better to keep silent than to speak up and let everybody know you're a fool, or something like that. I was like, I was the guy who always spoke up and everybody knew. Too. Yeah. I hear that. Unfortunately, I resemble that remark.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah. So you're that kind of wrestling with it all. In hindsight, though, it's become, that was part of your calling. That was part of the leadership journey for you, right?
Absolutely.
I hope so, because you're my pastor. So please say yes.
No. It absolutely was, but it also helped me, I think, recognize when people are going through that struggle that, like, sometimes you need somebody to help you get rerouted and say, pay attention to this sense of call or this drive. And I thought that was also a brilliant part of your writing, Mark, was you echoed that theme of saying doubt is that thing in that third quadrant that kind of reminds you of who you are and where you are. And it feels like it's a weakness, but it's the greatest strength, because it returns you back to yourself and allows you to see where you are pushed and called and led and motivated and all of those things that became true talents and strengths later, but just felt so riddled with insecurity when they're happening. And to have somebody who could, like, coach or affirm that, it's a real gift. And I thought it's just a nice job of saying, here's all these tools and pieces that affirm and validate something that feels so unaffirming and so invalidating when it's happening. That felt like a real gift.
I love that term, riddled with insecurity, because that is really what a lot of people, that's what doubt, the experience of doubt is. Meg, have there been places of that kind of experience for you, or have you pastored people through that?
Yes. And it's funny, as I read your book, I really saw it as an invitation to authentic leadership, to authenticity and integrity. And that's something I identified with in that way. I think doubt is an opportunity. It's when you have nothing to lose, you only have something to gain. Because if you have doubt, you maybe are willing to put it on the table or set it aside. But if you get a response to that doubt, then you're all in. You're going to pursue that, whether that's out of curiosity or even an attempt to deny. And so I was thinking about when we were previously on Long Island, serving in different congregations, and had, even before that, known that we wanted to try and find a place to serve together because we're different, and we thought it would be really fun to pastor one congregation with our different gifts, that we bring the yin and the yang. So anyway, so we started listening for that call to leadership out there, but it's really hard to find two pastoral positions open at once. So there was doubt about whether or not this was even going to be possible. Is there a place? Is there a call for us? And we sort of pushed the limits. We wrote letters to churches who weren't searching for two pastors, but were searching for one, and big enough to maybe have two. And that's sort of what happened here, is that we had nothing to lose in writing a letter and saying, we are two pastors who are interested in your church and we feel a connection. Is there any chance that you'd be open to talking about two pastors instead of one? And so we sort of followed that questioning road of a little bit of doubt. Is there a place? Could there be a place? And lo and behold, there was, and there is, and thanks be to God, we can be here with you, Mark.
Yeah, well, what was that like to go through? Because if the way I hear it is you decide, wow, what if we could do this together? Maybe this is where God's leading us. And then there aren't any clear billboards saying, hey, co-pastoring right here.
Right.
So how did you keep encouraged to persevere and push through? Or to just be crazy enough to write letters to people saying, here's a new idea?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it was years of dreaming and then followed by years of action with no result. And then, I mean, let's just hammer that doubt. This is never going to happen. You're never going to be able to have it. One family shared. But it really took years to grow into this until we found the right place that is the right place for so many reasons. And we're so glad that it's St. Giles. But it did take a lot of putting ourselves out on the line to say, I don't know if you're dreaming this, but we're dreaming this. Is it a chance that it could be a shared dream? And so again, I sort of go back to one of the themes I saw in your book about authenticity is we kept bringing this picture of here's who we are authentically trying to be. Does it match who you're looking for? Even though it's not clear that you have an invitation for us, but we just kept trying to put ourselves out there over and over and over again and got mostly not responses.
Oh gosh. So it wasn't rejections. It was just silence.
Just silence. And there were a few great conversations and a few rejections. But from the minute we started talking to St. Giles, it was clear there was a legitimate, holy connection. And we were so grateful and prayerful and had crossed our fingers and our toes. And we're just like, please, Jesus.
Make it happen. That was and you started here in May, right?
We started here in June. And we had started the conversation with St. Giles the previous August. So even that time of trying to figure it out was not a short amount of time and was riddled with doubt because along the way people were saying, we don't know.
Yeah. And there was also, I feel like I should get the page from the book and like show this, but there's an image of, I forget the actual wording. I know it's called cascading goals or vision or something like that. And that's what it felt like. Like, I think we had a really keen sense of who we wanted to be and what we were trying to give back to the world. And this sense of like, this is our call. Like, this is what we have been put in the world to be right now. Yes. There it is. And yeah,
cascading goals. And
like,
the
cascading goals. Or as I like to think about it, the anti-fish ladder. Like, instead of like bouncing up. But that was, I think we had this vision, right? That came out. I'm trying to figure out how cameras work. So there was like that vision. And then it felt like we just kept sharing that down and down and down to other people. Yeah. And like, there were some people who were like, that's such a great model for ministry. Like, I love the idea that you don't want to have a hierarchical model, that you want to work together in this, that you want to have this great partnership. We just don't get it. And
like and so who do we go to? If there's something has to be decided, who do we go to? You're going to be
right. Yeah. And it was like, it was not only that, but I think it's not a model that's common in a lot of corporate systems or leadership models. Sure. And I think there's not a lot of business structures that say like, here are going to be people who have dialogue rather than hierarchical decision-making. And, and I think that's been one of the sort of gifts of the ministry that we're doing is it feels like I'll have a good idea that gets workshopped into a better idea instead of like a crazier idea. And like when we do a co-pastorate like sermon, like we get to just sort of, it feels more like a dance than like blazing a trail all by yourself. And there's a lot of support and beauty in that. And it's so different than what other people are doing sometimes that it feels like, again, it just also feels sort of riddled with, what are we doing? Well, and it's beautiful.
And along those lines, one of my personal experiences with doubt is that it opens me up to brainstorming and within myself and with other people, so that when I have a question about something, or I'm willing to set it a little bit a ways away from me, then other people feed in, and suddenly it grows with lots of different possibility, and it gains a life that I wouldn't have expected. That doesn't happen when there's that niggle of, is this, could this?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I like that. That's really fun. I was just looking at our Amazon Lives feed, noticing that Surprising Gift of Doubt is there, but Meg, I didn't put the Presbyterian hymnal. So if any Presbyterian PCUSA folks are watching, Meg's name is in the hymnal that you're likely using at church when you're able to be in the church building again, or if you have one at home because you're that way. So, yeah. So what is it called again? Is Glory
to God.
Okay, phew. I'm a new Presbyterian, a new PCUSA. Glory to God. Yay. So I cut you off though, Adam, I think.
I was going to say, you have this part in the book where you talk about literary identity, or like literary heroes. And I think the movie, like there's a couple of movies where the entire world is transformed when somebody comes in and like their vision kind of transforms the place. Like Chocolat, I think, has that element where this woman comes in and she's like giving this to this community, and the community goes from being very rigid to very like much happier and more fluid and helpful. And it kind of feels like that's one of the surprising blessings of giving the sort of vision that we have, and sort of tried to culture and say, like, we do have some doubts, and that doubt inspires this great new way of being. And then it just sort of, like that cascading goals chart showed, like it just sort of flows in a way that everybody else is jumping on board, and the committees are, working more in a partnership than they did before. And there are such surprising fruits to like tending that tree that it's been really a delight to kind of see that. And it's still a pandemic, and like there's so much more that can change when we're not in sort of these restricted models. And I think like if we've been able to do this with the restrictions we have, what's it going to look like, driving without that?
Wow.
And and that's sort of exciting and mostly sort of terrifying, but mostly like exciting.
Exciting.
Yeah. Good. What are there things you've had to really not figure out, it sounds like you've arrived, work on this co-pastoring model, co-leadership, as you're defining it talking about it with yourselves, as you're kind of introducing it and trying to introduce it to different churches? Are there tips that you've learned so far, and as you've been living it out in the last few months, are there tips that you would be able to, if there are some people that are resonating with this, saying, yeah, I want to be a co-leader of an organization, whether it's a business or a ministry or whatever, are there some things that some advice you'd offer, how to get it, things that you found helpful?
We gave ourselves permission at the beginning to work on the big picture for the first year and not nail ourselves into particular roles, even though that has already naturally happened in a lot of different ways, but that we didn't want the organization to start siloing different parts of the job description. But we said intentionally for the first year, we're going to both be big picture to give ourselves a chance to learn the system and figure out how our gifts match up with the needs here. And so again, even though we've largely settled into patterns, I still think that was really important for us and for the church to say that at the beginning, and admit there are going to be some confusing months ahead, but we all need this as we get to know each other.
I think that's really smart because I think the push would be, I need clarity. Just tell me, who do I go to for which, and to have that permission to maybe find that you have a different fit. I think that's really that's great. Adam?
Yeah. To me, I would say the model we have feels more Venn diagram than hierarchical flowchart. where it's like we have areas that we sort of specialize in and like focus on, and then we have areas where we overlap and share. And I think it's helpful for people to know this is an overlap point. This is like a place where there's more of like you're just a primary decision maker and can see that. And so I would say that's probably something that I would say is helpful. And then I would also say in that co-leadership model, just to really trust the person you're working with. And you don't have to care about most of the stuff that is like, if it's in their zone, like you can completely let it go and trust that it's going to work because they're great. Like, and you know how great they are because you've spent time with them, and like, it just feels like there's so much trust and support in that model that like, I feel like I can let go of things and not check back in or feel like I need to micromanage or know the details. And that's important. I think that's hard in a congregation where they might think you have a hive mind and anything Meg knows I know, which is not true.
We are the Borg. Yeah, no.
Yeah. That would be great in some ways, but it would like...
No, because I like you both individually. I wouldn't want whatever that weirdness would be.
It has definitely taken some work and some intentionality because we had both been working independently as leaders in independent congregations. And so to come and not just automatically make a decision and say, oh, I do it this way, when it's like, oh, right, it's not just about the way I do it, it's about the way we are doing it. And so there have definitely been some moments where we've had to check ourselves at the door and be like, roll it in. But it's been, I don't know, I think this fits us. It fits us for who we are and the gifts we bring. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking forward to what the future holds.
As you've been pastoring and helping people, one of the things that you must see a lot is people that are wrestling with doubt at some point, because I think doubt is part of our human condition, and I think our culture is very scared of it. So are there ways that you found to create space for people to get the gifts of the doubt? St. John of the Cross talks about the dark night of the soul. There's a very rich tradition in the Christian tradition and in other faith traditions too of this exploration space, this liminal space. What are some things that people might do if they're feeling like maybe they're in that space now?
I think it's very easy for churches to act as though we have all the answers, even though in our theology, it's very clear that we don't have any of the answers. We just love to pretend that we do. So we write these thick tomes about explaining the minutia of how God must be at work, even though we don't know. And I do think that's an important piece of it, is to present our faith and our history through sermons and worship leadership. It's not as though Adam and I, this is not where the buck stops. And we have questions, and there are no real answers. We can lead people to scripture and sit with them in hard times, but no one has all the answers, and they can fool you into thinking that they do. So I think that's the gift of living in the gray and the doubt. That we are all right there together. And at least for the Presbyterian Church, the pastors are literally in the very same place as the people in the pews. There's no separation of, even though we are the pastors and have been to seminary, that doesn't mean we have a better ticket in a different class. Like we were in the muck together.
Yeah, I think that's true. And we also occupy a place of pretty prominent power every Sunday morning in a pulpit. And I think one of the places that one of the blessings of our ministry that we're doing and trying to do is we're pretty vulnerable and honest in the pulpit. And I don't think we're always giving those sermons that are very prosperity gospel or like very answer driven and like that kind of mentality of, if you do this, God does this. Like, I don't think that God is a vending machine or something that like a computer program where it's like guaranteed formulaic outputs. And I think we also are trying to say in our preaching and modeling that we don't know a lot of what's to be known. And there are so many different ways to look at different passages of scripture. And that's part of what the richness of the body of Christ is, of what the church should be and is that diversity makes us stronger. And like recognizing our limitations as two white people who get the power and privilege of being in the pulpit together in, a opposite gendered marriage, that like there's a lot that goes in that. And I think that that's important to name some of those things, like you did at the very beginning of your book, and saying, here's the privilege and perspective I have and where I'm writing from. And also here's the things that I don't know because I can't know because of I have one perspective in this world. I do not have all this perspectives. And I think that's really powerful. And in church, like this past week, we pushed people to sort of practice something every week. And this week we pushed them to practice the examine prayer, which at the end of the day, you look back on your day and you see all those places of not only like where you were strong and full of joy, but those places of doubt where you say like, I didn't know what I was doing today. This is where it was really hard, and finding a place that like gives that honesty. And I think that level of self-reflection is critical to anybody being an authentic leader. And if you can't see like where your own struggles are, I just don't think you're leading from a place of integrity. And that can work for a little bit, but that machine will break and you will have like a really nasty kind of comeuppance when everybody sees that like it was all a facade and there wasn't a house built behind it, or there wasn't like that doesn't work. And I think to be able to say, here's what this is, have some vulnerability in that, have authenticity in that, have the humility to really lead from that place of authentic leadership is powerful. And I think I hope that's one of the gifts that we give people, is to say, this is an invitation for you to see we don't have it all the time. And we know you don't. And we'd love to have those conversations that feel vulnerable, that the world around you is not creating space for, because they want you to have this like perfect, all put together, Instagram, Facebook, beautiful life. And it's not, like, it's raw and it's vulnerable, and your kid doesn't sleep through the night, and worse yet,
ours doesn't.
They're going to get in trouble, or like, what you're going to,
how did you know?
And someone's going to talk back or whatever. Like, and there's always that pushback. And so I think we have to try and help people get there, especially people in the congregation, because I think the church has been billed as like, in the media and other places, is like, here's the answers, like this is what a good Christian looks like.
And in itself, it's not just characterizations. It's the people that are in leadership that are saying we do have the answer. Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
So I didn't mean to so quickly agree with you when about you guys don't have it all together or have it all figured out. I realized that my affirmation may have been taken a little bit wrong. So I just love that you're modeling vulnerability, because I think there's a strength in vulnerability that our culture has missed, or a large part of the culture that I grew up with in this country. There's other traditions and other backgrounds that have that shared vulnerability that doesn't lose authority. It's not like you're abdicating authority or abdicating responsibility by having vulnerability. It's actually one of the strongest things you can do. And I love that you're both sharing that, and that cascading nature through our congregation is exciting to see that it's okay to not know. I often think of the Israelites as they're going across the Jordan, and it's like they have to have the ark so far ahead of them because we haven't been this way before. And so we're just going to have to, we're figuring this out as we go.
Right. Wow. I think it's a good reason why people should talk to teenagers on a regular basis, because teenagers are very willing to share their doubts, almost as a badge of honor. And the older you get, people seem to want to hide and cover those up. But teenagers are those Israelites going out towards the promised land. They have no idea where they're going, but they're just hoping to get there. And so spend time with teenagers.
Mark, can I ask you a question?
I'm sorry, we came to the end of our time. Thank you so much. I'm just kidding. Absolutely.
So I found your book to be really millennial friendly and positive in a way that
Ah.
I don't experience many books or like the news or other leadership models to really be in this time. And maybe it's just 2019, 2020, 2021, like, and there were just a couple of paragraphs that talked about the sort of toxic nature of raging on a generation and calling them lazy or whatnot. And like, I'm on the older cusp of millennial, and it just felt like somebody was saying, it's okay that you have explored different areas, that you've gained different skills, that like the world has not always had the opportunities that other places have had. And it felt so generous and affirming and uplifting. And I was curious about that. If you could say a little bit about where that came from. I think it was probably a paragraph here and a paragraph there, but every time you talked about millennials, it felt really affirming in ways that other books just are not. And I was so grateful for it.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's interesting because I don't know that I intentionally put that in there. Like I didn't think I want this demographic to know, but I guess in part I wrote the book for millennials because boomers. Well, okay, boomer. Boomers are just. I'm an Xer, and I have been an Xer all my life. Boomers are some of them. The impression I get from a lot of them in leadership is that they're not willing to give up yet, and they've got a lot to offer. So I'm not saying that, but there's not a lot of succession planning in the studies that I've seen being done. So they're going to leave either by choice or because life is a fatal disease. We are all going to end at some point, and there's this. Going to be the projections are a huge dearth in leadership, and millennials are going to be thrust into this void with very little training because that also the studies show in for-profit and not-for-profit that training doesn't exist well. But I think part of it is also my own personal baggage of being a Gen Xer, growing up, being told I was lazy and I was, didn't have a good work ethic and all this other stuff. I remember being taken 3 times in my first year of employment with a salary, being told, you're salaried now. You will stay until the job gets done. As though I didn't have a good work ethic. I've been working since I was 14. I didn't know. Of course, I was more focused on accomplishments than butt and seat. But I think that millennials have what we're learning from the new generations that come into the workforce are rehumanizing. We've had such a mechanistic way of doing work. And it served us to a point, but it dehumanized us. And so people that are willing to walk because of values, not because of money. I don't care if you pay me more. You're not being the diversity that you said you were, or you're not being the authenticity you said you were. I'm leaving. I think is going to force. I think it's going to wonderfully close a lot of organizations whose life has gone, and we can celebrate their accomplishments and move on to the future. But thank you. I'm glad it was really affirming because I feel like I cringe every time I hear the laugh line of the millennials or Z or whatever else, because it's usually by the generation that parented them.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what I mean, it seems too easy. It seems like people that are afraid of change. And so one of the things I hope for people reading this book and others is that they'll be open to learning. I think part of what maybe it's an ancient Greek kind of mindset. I don't know if that is the only culture, but I think there's a point where we feel like we're going to have arrived and we'll have it figured out, something figured out. And one of the things after 18 years of executive coaching I found in leaders is the only ones that seem to have arrived are the ones that have stopped growing and are more actively decaying. But the ones that seem to be continuing to learn and grow, age doesn't matter. But you have to come to grips with this. I'm not going to have it all figured out. Like you're saying, you have that humility, have that comfort with, I don't even have to, part of my identity is not having it all figured out. It's helping us figure it out together. I'm so glad that came out. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah. No, I was like, so excited about those. And it was really just a couple of sections where I was like, yes, thank you. Like finally somebody is putting in print in a book that says it's not always like, it is about humanity. It is about us in this together. It's about values. It's about culture. It's about us being able to say, I'm going to walk away from this. Like if it's not the diversity or if it's not those things that are core to like what I'm striving for, it's not, I don't care about the money. And it was like, it just felt like you were giving space and permission for these conversations that everybody else was like, yeah, you can have that as like your drive, but you're wrong and terrible. And like, and I was like, what? Like, I get so tired of people calling me a snowflake all the time that I'm like, like, this is who you trained us to be, and now we're living into that. And Suzanne Stabile has this great concept of like, sometimes leaders walk and in front, and sometimes the best leaders step aside to make space for those other people to come up. And it felt like finally somebody was saying, we're going to give you the tools and gifts that you need, but not really, because you also are already carrying all those tools and gifts inside of you. And it's a matter of trusting that and pulling those out and understanding that leadership is becoming who you are, not like replicating these other things, because that's only going to keep you in this limited space. But getting to that third and fourth quadrant of where you're a true leader, like, you've got to be able to pull those out. And I thought it was so beautifully tied in there that I was like, oh, finally somebody is like,
thank you,
giving that sort of coaching push in a way that like you have had that success with the work that you're doing. But then I feel like you really distilled it nicely into the words of this book to pass that gift along to so many people in a way that just was so invitational. And so like, it felt like you were giving a push on a swing and we were just going to go flying.
Thank you. As you're saying that, I'm receiving the praise and the affirmation. I'm also thinking of Richard Rohr's Falling Upward, where he talks about two halves of life, and the first half is building the container and the second half is giving it away and filling it up or whatever. So I have to go back because it seems like, oh, maybe I'm doing the right stuff with Falling Upward. That's great. Yeah. Wow. Well, I want to honor both of your times. Thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you for saying yes to our congregation. Everybody can, if you're looking for a place to just hang out on Sundays or any day of the week, because it's on YouTube, you can go to St. Giles Pres. It's the Greenville, South Carolina one, and attend church with us. I know we've had people from Wisconsin and other places attending church with us. And Meg and Adam, where can people find more about you or connect with you if they want to?
Probably on the website is a great place to go, stgilespres.org.
Awesome.
Definitely. Like, you can find our emails there. If you send us a note, we'll do our best to reach back and be in touch.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I'm honored that you're in our life.
Congratulations, Mark. We're proud of you.
Absolutely. Thanks. Well done. Thank you for having us with you today.
Yay! I think we're out.